there, fellow Hulk fans. It is Jerry Rasco here with you. And if you're a subscriber to my channel, you may be saying to yourself, wait a minute, that's not the normal introduction. Doesn't the guy usually talk about webheads and Spider-Man? Yes, I do. However, this is a new video series that I'm adding to the channel where I am going to be doing a very similar situation that I do with my Amazing Spider-Man videos with the Incredible Hulk. So we are going to start looking at the Incredible Hulk issue by issue, starting out with the Incredible Hulk #1 from 1962 and going through every issue of the Incredible Hulk up through at least through the year 2007. So again, if you're familiar, if you're not, and this is the first time you're finding the channel, my name is Jerry Rasco. I am an artist. I am a big lover of comic books, as you could probably tell. And I have been doing this series with the Amazing Spider-Man going all the way back to the beginning and talking about the art in these comics and how the artist chose to bring these to life. So I also have a digitized version of the Incredible Hulk series as well. So in 2007, Marvel Comics went out and got physical copies of every issue of the Incredible Hulk and scanned them and put them on a DVD. And so you could purchase it, and all the files were PDF files that you could open and view with your computer. So you now had digital copies of, at that time, the entire run of the Incredible Hulk. They also did this with the Fantastic Four. I think they did it with Captain America and possibly the X-Men as well. So I started out with Spider-Man, my favorite hero. But I also have this series of the Incredible Hulk, and I wanted to go through it, and I realized very quickly that with my Spider-Man series, doing it once a week, after 58 episodes, which took me over a year to do, it was going to be a really long time before I got through upwards of 300 issues of Spider-Man, and then started on the Hulk. So I wanted to do this series in parallel. So I thought, let's start this, let's do these as well, and we'll launch these just on a different day here on YouTube. So if you're a fan of Spider-Man, hopefully you're also a fan of the Hulk. If you're, if you're just the Hulk, we've got a series for you here too as well. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take a look together at the Incredible Hulk, and again, talk about the art primarily. We'll talk about the story, but primarily the focus here is on the art and how these classic artists brought these issues to life. So without further ado, let's jump over to the desk over here and take a look at the Incredible Hulk together. So here we have the cover to the Incredible Hulk #1. So I think this image is pretty iconic. Most comic book fans or even passing fans would have probably seen this somewhere in a montage. Certainly this cover has been recreated with other characters, other artists, but this is where it all started. So this is the Incredible Hulk #1. The story is written by Stan Lee. The issue is drawn or penciled by Jack Kirby, and we'll get into some of the, specifics about Jack Kirby for anybody who's not familiar. However, what I didn't know, which I did some research to find out, is that this was inked by a gentleman named Paul Reinman. So he's not credited in the book. Again, this is from 1962, and at that time they didn't always give credits for everybody who worked on the book. So there's no colorist credits. It's usually just writer, and back then they would just say artist, but really in this case it is a penciler. So I did a little research on Paul Reinman. He was both a penciler and inker. He started doing early work with Timely Comics, which eventually became Marvel Comics. He worked on some war books, Western books, things like that. And then eventually he did some work for DC Comics on Golden Age Green Lantern stories. And again, eventually bouncing back and forth between Marvel and DC, working on other Jack Kirby projects such as the X-Men and the Avengers. So kind of an unsung hero. When people talk about Jack Kirby, maybe later, certainly Jack Kirby. So for those who don't know who Jack Kirby is also known as the King. Jack is one of the most influential comic book artists of all time, really developing the style, the feel, and the sort of language that we use in many modern comics today. There are other artists of the time as well. Don't let the press fool you to think that Jack Kirby was the only guy. If you go back and look at our Spider-Man videos in the other playlist, you will learn a lot about Steve Ditko, who was also one of these founding fathers of comic book art. Jack gets a lot of publicity or fame, and rightly so, because of his prolific artistic work. So Jack worked on and helped create the visuals for characters like the Hulk, Captain America, the X-Men, Thor, the Fantastic Four, and of course all the other characters, the villains, all of the secondary characters, all that kind of stuff. So Jack Kirby, very well known. The Jack Kirby Stan Lee combo, extremely famous in the world of comics, and without them we wouldn't have any of the stuff we have today with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, obviously the books, the merchandise, the amusement park rides. All that stuff stems from this early beginning in the early 60s. Great cover. We have here, it's a monster story, and it kind of does read very much like a monster story more than a superhero story, certainly in the beginning, which makes sense. Jack Kirby worked on monster books. That was a popular genre of story at the time. And, so while we had characters like a Captain America, Thor, stuff like that, the Hulk was a little bit of a step away at the time, but obviously became a clear, true superhero type book in the end. We'll talk about the elephant in the room is the gray color. So if you're not familiar with this lore, the Hulk is gray in the first issue, and does change fairly quickly. There's a couple of different stories, so it depends on who you talk to, what book you read, or what internet source you use as to why the transition from the gray coloring. One line of thought says that the gray coloring wasn't consistent, and because of the inconsistencies, they decided to go with a more consistent color, being green. The other thing is, some people will say that the printer broke. There was an issue or a problem with it in trying to print the issue. They couldn't get the gray tone to work, and so they just changed it to green. There's also the element of just physical printing at the time. When you're printing on this super thin newsprint, sometimes a lot of white or a lot of gray, light gray, like this tone is, would allow you to see through the page on the darker printing on the back side, and that would screw up the imagery. So there's all kinds of different reasons. I've heard all of those could be legit. In the end, we know that the Hulk doesn't stay gray for very long. But this cover definitely does give off a very Frankenstein-y kind of imagery, from the large flat head with the fringe of hair, the ripped clothes, the gray coloring. All of it feels very Frankenstein-y, which is clearly a source. You have Dr. Bruce Banner in the middle as he's transforming. And here, interestingly enough, he's colored blonde on the cover, but he has brown hair on the inside. So just a note there of interest. And then you have some other supporting characters. This is Betty Ross and her dad, General Thunderbolt Ross, who obviously become very big characters in the mythos of the Hulk as we move ahead. So we move in, and again, as I mentioned, this is the PDF copy of the original, so you can see what it looks like from that time frame. As the indicia says, this is copyright 1962, May of 1962, in fact. So pretty old. We have the Hulk and this image by Jack Kirby. So here's your only credits. It's by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. We know it's written by Stan Lee, drawn by Jack Kirby. And it does have a very Frankenstein-y appearance in this image. Again, from the head, the thick hands, the eyebrows being very low over the brow, all these things give him a very monstrous appearance, which is, of course, what they're going for. Real quick, I just want to talk about Jack Kirby again. We'll be talking about him a lot, obviously, as the beginning of the series goes, until eventually other artists take over. But the thing about Jack Kirby, this may be a little controversial. I'm not the biggest Jack Kirby fan in the world. I know there's people that absolutely love his work and go crazy, and for them, Jack Kirby is the end-all, be-all for artists. For me, not so much. I really didn't care for the artwork when I was young. I've learned to appreciate what he brought to the table, and I think it's more about the style and again, we'll see the psychology of the art more than the technical application of the art. So for me, like, things are very boxy. Jack Kirby worked in my opinion, what I call like a visual shorthand. So we'll see over and over, there's things that he does, not so much in these early days, definitely later, as we get into the late 60s, into the 70s for sure. He would just use sort of squiggles for shading. So for example, anytime anybody had light coming down on their face, he'd sort of use the same little square and squiggle mark on their bottom lip and chin that indicated a shadow. It's not how real shadows looked. It's not even how you necessarily would illustrate the shadow. It was Jack's shortcut or shorthand for a shadow. And what I think happens is, over time, you read enough of these comics. And remember, again, Jack Kirby is putting out, as an artist, a bunch of comics at this time. Hulk, Fantastic Four, Thor. He did bits of work here and there. Like, he would do like maybe one issue of Iron Man, and then somebody else would take over. Or he'd do the cover for Amazing Fantasy 15, and then Steve Ditko would do the interior Spider-Man. Stuff like that. So this guy was doing a ton of work. So speed was necessary. So creating that visual shorthand is very important. And that's what Jack definitely did. But you get a sense of a big, heavy, thick character, a lot of power in the musculature, but a very soft face in terms of the view. This isn't the raging, angry Hulk. It's just almost a sad monster. Again, super Frankenstein influences, right? So we cut in here to the actual story. And for anybody who's not familiar with the origin of the Hulk, Dr. Bruce Banner is a physicist working for the Army. He develops a gamma-based bomb, so similar to, right, a nuclear bomb, just using a different kind of radiation, specifically gamma rays, instead of basing it off of uranium or plutonium or whatever, right? So they call it the G bomb. It's a gamma bomb. He's betrayed by his co-worker. He goes to save a young boy, and when the bomb goes off, Bruce Banner absorbs massive amounts of gamma radiation that should have killed him. It doesn't, and that radiation transforms him into the Incredible Hulk. We'll get into his story here about when he changes and when he doesn't, which changes over time with the story. But for now, we'll just keep it simple. Radiation mutates Dr. Banner, and he turns into the Hulk at times. So we have here General Ross, who does not like the Dr. Banner because Dr. Banner is a scientist and not a soldier, and so he's, kind of belittling him for not just hurrying up and testing this new bomb, because Thunderbolt Ross wants the bomb real bad. And then his daughter Betty arrives to visit and say hi. So just talking here, I like. So this is obviously a more it's a more grid style of page layout, very similar to what we saw in the early issues of the Amazing Spider-Man and other comics of that time. Because again, remember, we're talking about a point where comic books are still often reprinted material from things like newspaper strips. Newspapers have great circulation at the time. Everybody in America is reading newspapers. It's how primarily everybody gets their news. And so comic books themselves wouldn't necessarily have the greatest distribution, but if you could take a comic strip that tons and tons of people read and take those strips, which are usually kind of 3 panels, 4 panels in a row, and repurpose them into a shape like this, you had a book that you could reprint, and you're selling the same material more than once. That's sort of the origin of what we call comic books today. And so that still lives in the setup. Lots of small little panels, regardless of what the action is going on inside of them. Lots of little panels stacked together. Again, similar to if you cut any of these pages in thirds, it could be just a straight couple panels from a newspaper strip. I thought that like I said, the early Kirby is stylized. It's not as much as it will get to. We'll see some of that, but there's definitely some Jack Kirby isms that we'll run into. So like, for example, the this face on General Ross, I'm going to zoom in so we can see it a little closer. I think a lot of that sort of stuff where, his mouth is real big as he's yelling, this kind of crazy view look, the hand with the big black shadow underneath, the way that Dr. Banner's sort of tucking his chin in as he's being, belittled by the general. It's very nice direction, if you will, by Jack Kirby. It's adding personality to each of the characters, and I really like, even with a small panel, you have a lot of nice background detail, and I'll touch on that in a little bit. But this is a pretty, to me, very Jack Kirby. I see that and I go, yeah, that's a Jack Kirby panel, more so than some of the others. He does a good job of moving the camera around as well. That's something that's important. So that when we refer to the camera in this series of videos, what that means is our relation visually to what's happening. So for example, the picture of the bomb here, that is considered a long shot. We are far away from that bomb. Same with the next one where it shows the bunker. That is a far away long shot. Then we zoom in closer, and there's this nice framing element of the window in the bunker, and you have Dr. Banner's face in that window. Nice depth there. Then we move to the camera. Now we're inside. So it's our visual position in relation to the image as if it was a real 3D space. So that's what we mean when we say camera. So, so you have some close-ups. You pull back a little bit, you see the full figures talking to each other, then we kind of zoom back in a little bit, then we zoom back out. So there's movement of the camera in many different ways on each page, and that's good. It keeps the visual interest. If you just had two heads talking to each other in the same depth of space over and over and over, the comic would be very boring. So that's very nice. So here we go. Here's the kid. This is Rick Jones. This is the first appearance of Rick Jones, who plays a massive role in the history of Marvel Comics over time. Rick Jones is associated with the Hulk, the Avengers, Captain Marvel, Captain America. I'm not sure who else, but Rick Jones is one of those characters that keeps reappearing. He is the thread that ties a lot of the early and even later Marvel universe together. So this is our first appearance of Rick Jones, who's snuck onto the army base not realizing it's a bomb site, bomb testing ground. Dr. Banner gets blasted. We have this nice sort of almost photo negative, if you will, of the light behind him. So there's this crazy shadow of the explosion. It's very nice stuff. And then this screaming Dr. Banner as he kind of comes to later. And again, this mouth right here, this is a very Jack Kirby mouth. It's squared off. The teeth are sort of hinted at and squared off, and you see some, they're not very regular and straight. A lot of Jack's characters had kind of weird teeth sometimes. That is, again, this face to me very Jack Kirby. When I look at it, what is it? It's sort of this nose, the divot under the nose to the mouth, that to me really identifies it. There's something else that I'll point out as we're going, which I think, and I don't know how much of this, I think this is a Jack Kirby thing. It could be tied to Paul Reinman as the inker, or maybe it's the combination, but there's not a lot of real heavy shadows. So, you know, when you look here at people in the bunker, yeah, there's, you know, this leg is in shadow. The backside of Betty is in shadow. Spam call. But there's not tons and tons. Like under his chin, there's no real shadow. There's not a lot of shadow underneath the general's hat, for example. There's just things like there's no shadows underneath them on the ground even. Yes, Bruce's leg is in shadow because it's behind his thigh, so it's blocking it, but not huge shadows. And of the shadows that are there, like this shadow along the line of Bruce's cheek and jaw, there's no real feathering or rendering. It tends to be a very stark black shadow. You see it over here as he transforms into the Hulk for the first time. There's just sort of black shadows. There's no hatching between two, and what the hatching does is it helps your eye transition from dark to medium to light. It's either black or it's white. There's a little bit here and there. There's a little bit of sort of, this is supposed to be sort of a feathering on the edge of the arm, just a little bit, but it could also be kind of considered maybe it was supposed to be hair, because there isn't a ton of that hatching. Back of the shirt is just black. Under the arm where it's casting a shadow on his leg is just black. There's not a lot, again, of that rendering between the two. So again, just sort of Kirbyisms that are coming through that he'll continue to develop into more and more of his visual language. So he transforms into the Hulk for the first time. Let me zoom back out so we can see the whole page. And breaks through the wall and smashes into this Jeep. So we're seeing more so than like maybe a Frankenstein at this point. Yes, physically he's a Frankenstein, but it's almost more of a Jekyll and Hyde. Dr. Banner has transformed into a monster, and the monster doesn't know where he is because they're completely different people. They're not aware of each other at the moments. So when the Hulk is the Hulk, he doesn't know about Banner. When Banner is Banner, he does not know what the Hulk did or did not do unless someone tells him. So then you have him break through this wall. Now this is great. I love this shadow. This is a very nice piece where, because it's nighttime, he's breaking through the wall. And then you've got the little bit of debris as he steps out and a Jeep hits him. This is a very nice little 2-panel series right here. Maybe even 3 if you count the breaking through the wall. And then standing. The Hulk's not moving. He's not punching. He just sort of, to me, it looks like he just sort of braced himself. And the car ran into him, which is why these guys are flying around. And it's the action of the parts of the car, the glass, and these other people. He's barely moving. He's barely leaning forward, he being the Hulk. while all these other things are flying around him, is a great image. It makes him an immovable object, and everything else is moving. The glass overlapping this guy over here is very, very nice touch. Same on the leg. It shows you that he's come through the windshield. The overlapping of this figure in the front as he's being flung out of the Jeep, also excellent. So simple uses of overlapping, great motion in this panel. I really, really liked it. I think it's one of the coolest, strongest panels in the entire book. So the Hulk wanders off, and actually right now, if we notice, he's not referred to as the Hulk at this point. He doesn't have a name. He just realizes he has to go, and Rick Jones follows him because Rick Jones owes him since he saved Rick from the bomb. And that then is part 1. So now we go to part 2, and this book is broken into a few multiple parts. And why would that be? Right? You could have just continued from this panel. He runs off, and then next thing you know, he's hiding, and the army is out looking for him. My personal belief is that while this is done in one issue, lots and lots of brand new characters were introduced in anthology books. Things like Journey into Mystery, Strange Tales. There were a bunch of those kinds of anthology stories that you'd have maybe 4 or 5 pages, maybe even a little more, maybe a little less, but you get to try out a character and see how people responded to it. Does the public like it? Are the readers interested? If so, you could spin them off into a book. Spider-Man is a great example. Spider-Man is arguably Marvel Comics' #1 character. It's been their masthead for a long, long time. But he started in Amazing Fantasy, which again was an anthology book. So, you might have a Spider-Man one week, and then the next week you're going to get Zemu the Titan. And then the ones that were popular, that got a lot of response, they get spun off into their own. So that's how you have Amazing Fantasy 15 and then Spider-Man #1. Hulk got Hulk #1. But the fact that the story's broken up this way makes me think that the original plan was, let's put it in an anthology book. So they had pre-broken up the story so that you could literally end it here and then the next month start over, which makes more sense than having it broken this way in one book. Because, I mean, realistically, we're only at page 7. So that's my opinion on what probably happened. I don't know for sure, but that makes a lot of sense to me. This is a very nice splash page of the Hulk. I like him hiding behind the rock. I think the soldiers are excellent, and the fact that the lights are behind them, so this guy's all in shadow and the lights are there. That is a great, great way to have something in the background not take away from your foreground. So I say this a lot to folks who are watching this. Hopefully you are artists like myself, because we can learn a lot from these old comics. A way for you to have figures very simple in the background, not taking away from your foreground figures. Dramatic lighting. Excellent way. And then you're just really doing the shape and a few highlights, and boom, you have a soldier in the background. That being said, I did note this. This whole page is great. The Jeep up in this corner here of this of the next page, and then this soldier down here in the bottom is awesome. Again, just using some basic shapes, a little bit of shadow. Now this is really nice here. The sort of little bit of rendering on the helmet to give it like a texture as the shadow is passing over it. And then you got the shadow under where his eyes would be in the back of the ear. Very, very nice stuff there. I believe one of the reasons that Jack did such a nice job with the uniforms, the guns, the soldiers, I mean, even like the boots, the helmet, and the way that the shadow would cast off that helmet. Jack Kirby did war books. So during he was a soldier, and he did draw World War II comics. Obviously, Captain America, one of his greatest creations, is a World War II era comic. And so he knew what he was doing. So this is one of those things where he really could excel, whereas maybe somebody who didn't serve would, again, thinking about the early 60s, you may not have a lot of references. We don't have Google the way we do today to look up, military police uniform or Air Force general uniform or stuff like that. So this was done from his experience, and I think it really shows. The Army figures, the Army characters are very, very strong throughout the book. I think the Hulk needs more shadows here personally. He's hiding behind a rock, and the lights are coming from behind the rock. So you could do, again, easier said than done with today's technology, with Photoshop and stuff. I could do edge lighting around the bottom of the rock and maybe on the outside edge of the Hulk a little bit, which is, I think, what they're trying to do with the white highlight here. But I would like to see some more darker core shadows where he's bent over, where the drapes of the clothes are overlapping. Certainly, maybe even on the side of the face that's turned away. I think that would really help the forearms. I would put some shadows in there. I get it. You want everybody to see your brand new character, but there's going to be plenty of other opportunities. I think I would put the Hulk in more shadow. That's me. Again, more good stuff. Little coloring error here as the Hulk is walking through apparently it says a cottage. Looks more like trees than building material. That's okay, but all of a sudden now he's pink instead of gray. So just a coloring error there. Not sure why. The Hulk arrives back at Banner's home and finds his assistant is trying to steal the calculations for the gamma bomb, and because he's a spy, and he shoots the Hulk, which doesn't stop him. And you can see the power of the Hulk crushing a pistol in his bare hands. Defeats the spy, finds the formula by accident, and then again sees a picture of himself as Dr. Banner and doesn't understand that they are the same people. Also here we see that Hulk. So it's just a soldier, just refers to him as, because they don't have a term for it, that Hulk. And so that sticks, and that's where the name the Hulk comes from. So Banner and the Hulk doesn't understand who he is. Again, much more of a Jekyll and Hyde kind of situation where they're really two distinct people in the same body that transforms. Also, well, you're going to see here from the first couple images, especially like this image, he's much more human looking other than the green or the gray skin, the gray skin. This one maybe a little more thicker brow over here. It's harder to see a little when it's straight ahead. This is a good example where you can see he has much more, again, of a Frankenstein kind of appearance. Thick brow, short nose, long upper lip, and kind of a flat top to the head. You really see that there. And then in this next page, it's really illustrated better with the thick brow that we had not seen so far. And that's something that will carry through the Hulk off and on. We'll see throughout history. He then, again, you may notice as well, if you're familiar with the Hulk, this Hulk is not dumb. He is not Bruce Banner genius, but he speaks in full sentences. He remembers something. He understands that he's much more powerful than everybody else. And the only person that knows that he is connected to Bruce Banner is Rick Jones, and he decides maybe I have to get rid of Rick Jones. And then the sun comes up, and Dr. Banner transforms back, or the Hulk transforms back into Dr. Banner at sunrise. So this sets up a precedent of he'll turn into the Hulk at night and back into Banner in the morning. That changes. Everything changes. His cognitive abilities, obviously the overall design, the skin color, and when and how he transforms. So for now, it's a day and night situation. Again, we're broken into another chapter. This is pretty good. of a splash page. Again, this is where it struck me like, wow, these uniforms are really good. Like this, the little detail of the strap over the helmet, the insignia on the arms, the guns. Obviously, again, Jack Kirby pulling from real life experience with the military. So those details are really, really nice. So when you're dealing with something as crazy as a man transforming into a big beast, we're grounded in a little bit more of a reality. Again, very different if you think about your traditional superhero stories, your Spider-Mans, Thors, Fantastic Four. You don't see a lot of army. We don't see a lot of military, but much more commonplace with your monsters, right? With your monster books. And the Hulk is still sort of dipping into that monster book territory. Let's see here. They patch him up. He has a little conversation with Betty. We can see there's some flirtation going on with Betty Ross. And Dr. Banner kind of formulating sort of what the situation is. He has an understanding that when the sun sets, he will change into this crazy thing, this crazy monster, and he doesn't know what he's going to do, and he's scared. And this is a nice transition using the lighting for this very sort of dark thought process of Dr. Banner, where, you know, he's like, how do I know what's going to happen? I don't know if I won't change, but that whatever I change into is horrible and scary, and I may turn into the Hulk again. So now we go to yet another chapter. So again, you can see where this could be broken up very easily into an anthology book, only 5 or 6 pages per chapter. And then you've got the next month's continuation of the story. So this is Igor the spy who was trying to steal the gamma bomb information. It turns out he's a Russian spy, and he sends a signal to Russia. The face here, it's an interesting splash to cut. I like the scene change, and I like the large figure of a guy, you know, in his cot in prison. The face is kind of messed up. And this is one of the things, again, for me, maybe that sort of made it one of the things that I didn't care. I've never really cared much for in regards to Jack Kirby's art. And that is sometimes basic things that we all take for granted with comic illustration, I feel like sometimes gets missed. And again, this may be a hot take for some people, I don't know, but like, I understand the guy's head is slightly turned. It's slightly tilted. So one eye is going to be a little bit higher than the other, but this eye is way higher than the other one. The hairline is extremely low. So this guy's hairline is like here. The nose is bent at an angle. Maybe he has a big broken nose. I don't know. I mean, it's definitely an individual face. I'll say that. But I felt like the eyes are off. The nose looks weird. I don't know if it's the shadow, the shape. There's something that just sort of flattens out or twists the face with it. Otherwise, the overall figure is pretty good. But you can see, like, if you look at this face, that's supposed to be that guy. So let's zoom in. I know it's a small image. This guy right here, I guess, is supposed to be, or, you know, this is the same guy, is supposed to be that guy in the prison. I suppose it's not that far of a stretch, but again, just sort of weird. And this sort of lighting, so yeah, the light is coming from this side. That's perfectly fine. But this sort of dark, very stark shadows on the face in sort of shapes. Again, down that nose, around, down the chin, the cheekbone and jawline, stuff like that. To me, very Kirby elements that you recognize over and over. We have the Gargoyle. So this is the introduction of a first Hulk villain. So you may think, who's the Hulk's first villain? Is it the Abomination? Is it the Leader? Is it, one of those characters? No, it is the Gargoyle, a mutated Russian scientist. And I feel like this face, again, is something Kirby did a lot, where he would draw a character and it would have sort of maybe these crazy wrinkles around the mouth or the eyes or something. And then it often became very difficult for him to stay consistent with those. So I don't know. Again, speed is critical at this time, at this juncture of publishing. So I don't know how many characters like the Gargoyle were developed on the page, as opposed to, hey, I'm going to take a couple days and I'm going to do design sketches for the Gargoyle and draw him 50 times so I know what he looks like in every position. More likely, probably designed it on the page and then just had to replicate it over and over, which is why you get a lot of variation. The Russians send the Gargoyle. So Gargoyle has found out about the Hulk and the gamma bomb information, and so he wants this Hulk being for himself. And Doc Banner and Rick Jones are driving around. That way, if he transforms, he's not in his home, and he wouldn't be destroying his home per se. Very interesting. We see Dr. Banner for the first time in purple. This becomes a classic element of the Hulk wearing the purple pants, which makes a lot of sense on the green Hulk. The green and purple both being secondary colors. I haven't talked about this in a long time. Color choice is very big. It will obviously play more of a role when the Hulk is green permanently, but secondary colors, green, purple, orange, typically do not go with your heroic characters. Your heroic characters are usually depicted in your primary colors, blue, red, yellow. Secondary colors, you think of, just list Spider-Man villains, the Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus, the Lizard, the Sandman, all the Vulture, green, and purple. So interesting that the Hulk would be in purple and then eventually being green, even though we consider him a hero. Is he a monster that happens to do heroic things, or is he really a hero? So there is some psychology to the design and to some of these choices for sure. And of course, I find it interesting here that the Hulk is green. So again, this is not recolored. This is the original coloring of this panel. And we see after he transforms and their Jeep crashes, he is green. Why? Well, in the panel up above, you can see they used yellow. So during the transformation, it's just a color choice to bring attention to the fact that his hands are changing. It's not just drawn more thickly. It's actually changing. And he's rising up from a wrecked car that they decided to color gray. So to help separate him from the car, I think they just chose a random color. Over here, for example, the Gargoyle steps out of this rocket capsule that he lands in, and he's in red. In the rest of the comic, he is not red. And then down here, he's orange. It's just a way to use a separate color in a time when you only had 4 colors to print with, and you mixed 4 colors to make every color you could. You had a limited palette to work with. So if you have a nice blue night background, this orange is going to pop off that blue. Same thing here. We've got red around the character and gray here. So green is a great choice. Of course, as we all know, this will be the way things go in the future. Betty is thinking about Bruce Banner, and of course, General Ross is not particularly happy with that. We'll see. But I really like the way that that this is drawn. You don't see this a ton. The time to do the double chin, the jowls, as his chin is stuck out with the cigar in his mouth. If you're an avid Marvel fan like I am, you know that there are lots of characters over time that have had cigars. Characters like Nick Fury, characters like Wolverine, characters like The Thing often had cigars. But a lot of times the artist would just sort of draw the mouth and it would just be protruding from the line of the mouth, or it would be gritted teeth and it would just be stuck in between the teeth. Where here, Jack actually took the time to say, hey, this guy is protruding, sticking his jaw out to hold onto his cigar with his lips, which is a subtle thing, but it really does make the difference between a good drawing and just an okay one. So this is really, really nice here. Um, Betty sees the Hulk. She passes out. She faints, and then the gargoyle comes. And again, we have another chapter. Again, this is be a perfect end right here for the book, for the month. Betty's fainted. What's the Hulk? Is the Hulk going to take her? No, the gargoyle's caught up with him. You wait a month, the next issue. If this was the first page of the next issue, you'd be perfectly fine with that. So you can see, remember I mentioned that when the gargoyle's coming out of the capsule, he was colored all in red, and then we saw him in orange. Here we go. He's pink. His gloves are brown. His uniform is green. So again, we just use neutral colors. Here's down here, orange. Why is everybody in a reddish orange color? To pop off the blue background. Why is the background blue? Because it's nighttime, and so you're using these cues to help sell context without being able to color things naturally the way we do today, again with Photoshop. You see this Hulk face is a little different even, which makes me wonder, like, how long was it between these chapters where it was drawn? The brow is not quite as big and puffy. It's more, again, of a Frankenstein-y face. I think the space between the bottom of the nose and the top lip is grown even longer, so maybe that nose has been shortened up a little bit. It's definitely slightly different. And so, we're going to see that. There's an evolution, and that comes from repetition of drawing the character. The gargoyle, basically, he doesn't drug them, but he uses a weapon to get Rick and the Hulk to follow him, and he kidnaps them and flies them to Russia. And of course, as we know, if you go up high enough, you will be able to see over the curve of the Earth the sun. So what happens when the Hulk sees the sun and the sun's sunshine begins to hit him? He transforms back into Bruce Banner, which up until now, the gargoyle does not know that happens. So he's like, oh, well, there is no Hulk, but he knows who Bruce Banner is. So he's a valuable prisoner anyway. But you can see, like, the design of the gargoyle, like this face here. Again, for Jack to be consistent with it over time was difficult. This is a pretty good depiction down at the bottom here, but a little hard to be consistent. But Dr. Banner realizes that the gargoyle is the way he is, that his genius and his physical mutation both come from radiation, and so he can help him. And he does. He cures him, and the gargoyle decides to repay that kindness by betraying the people that forced him to work with radiation and become mutated in the first place. So he sets the Bruce and Rick in another rocket back home, while he, as a normal man, this is the gargoyle, has been unmutated. He sets off a bomb to destroy the soldiers that come for him. So again, lots of grid form, moving the camera in and out, and that's it. And that's the end of the story. So the first Hulk story has his origin, the beginning, the introduction to the military, and then one little bit of a story with the gargoyle, a Russian mutation or Russian mutant. So that is our story. Let's cut back over to the desk and we'll wrap things up on the Hulk #1. So that is the Hulk #1, and yeah, it's the Incredible Hulk #1, I should say. Um, it's interesting. It has a lot of the things that we think of when you think of the Hulk, as the transformation. It has Rick Jones, the sidekick. It has the military hunting the Hulk, not knowing that the Hulk and Bruce Banner are the same person. You have the introduction of Betty Ross, the love interest, and Thunderbolt Ross, her dad, who doesn't approve of either. He doesn't like Bruce Banner, and he wants to destroy the Hulk. So you've got all the beginnings there of something really cool, and pretty quick we're going to see some adjustments, and that's where we're going to see things like the green coloring coming in. He's when is he change? Does he just change at night and then change back in the day? Versus he changes when he gets angry, so he could change at any time. These are all things that will develop and evolve over the course of the book. So I'm very much looking forward to getting into that and seeing how that develops, seeing how Jack Kirby's art works with the story, and then other artists. We're going to see some Steve Ditko art. So again, if you're a fan of my Spider-Man series, you'll recognize his art. And then we'll get into lots of other creators over time. So very excited about that. And then let me end it with this and leave you with another cool giveaway. So if you are a subscriber, if you have been around with the channel, you know that I am pushing to get to 1,000 subscribers for the year 2026. Right now we're over 300, closer to 400, and that is all thanks to you. So if you're enjoying this or the Spider-Man series or both, make sure to click the subscribe button. Again, subscribing to the channel is free. And then you might want to click the notification so you know when new videos are coming out. Once we reach 1,000 subscribers, a random subscriber will be drawn, and they will receive this original Spider-Man illustration by yours truly, shipped to them free at no charge. All you have to do is be a subscriber. There'll be a few steps you'll have to go through to win, just in terms of commenting on the video, letting me know you're a subscriber, that sort of thing. Some hoops we have to jump through to get there, but you will get free art just by being a subscriber to the channel. However, you get more art. We're doing the Hulk. That's right. So the 1,000 subscriber lucky winner will also get this Hulk illustration by yours truly. Again, original 11 by 17. This one, more of a savage green classic Hulk that we're all aware of. This piece will also go to that winner. So subscribing gets you even more benefits. So hit that subscribe button, leave comments, let me know what you think of this new series of the Incredible Hulk, and I hope you enjoyed this one. I'll see you next week with more Incredible Hulk. Thanks.